All right, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for coming to my presentation today. I really appreciate your time. And also thank you, David, so much for giving me this opportunity to present. It's a real honor, and I've learned so much as a result of this that I will be forever grateful. The title of my presentation today is The Unforeseen Dynamic: How PR Can Transform KVLR. And when I first started researching this, I didn't anticipate all of the synergistic components of this that I think could work for KVLR. And I'll make that case today. We'll begin with a quick roadmap for the presentation, beginning with a framework for discussion, then an overview of Bevel PR. Then finally, we'll close with a model that I would seek to implement. Beginning with a framework for discussion. First, we'll talk about what is PR, why it is important, and then things you should know, things I've learned as a result of my research. So what is PR? Well, I think John D. Rockefeller put it best. He said, next to doing the right thing, the most important thing is to let people know you are doing the right thing. And that's true across all industries, across all specializations. PR is important because you're just letting people know you're doing the right thing. And you can't expect a healthy business without that. One example of a PR disaster is one that actually hits quite close to home. In 2014, the Phoenix VA had a major PR crisis. They had long waiting times, and 40 patients died while waiting to see a doctor. It quickly blew up on all social media, on all media platforms, and my dad was actually tasked with reforming their clinic, flying out to DC to reform their clinic and to help this out. But no matter what you do, it always has negative impacts. So I pulled up on Google, why is the VA? And it auto-populated with some of the most popular search results. Why is the VA so bad? Why is the VA so slow? Why is it underfunded and so horrible? Those things, no matter how good you are at PR, some of these things are impossible to fix. And I think it's likely due to the fact that they were so slow to fix it. And if they had probably a better PR team, this would have not been the case. But you can see this is a detrimental impact to their brand image and to the trust level of the veterans. So why is it important in healthcare? Well, as we discussed earlier, it's a reputation-driven industry. It's very difficult to have people come into your hospital and trust you with their life without a good reputation. So when we look to implement PR into our healthcare space, we have to recognize that there's lots of hospital systems and healthcare practices that need us because it is a reputation-driven industry. Secondly, in healthcare, crises are quite common, but nonetheless, they are detrimental to brand image. You take the example of VA, they're still trying to recover from that, and the media results are evidence for that. And crises are quite common. In fact, if you look at the financial statements of many of the practices that we're talking to on a daily basis, you'll see that they have malpractice insurance that covers the financial side of it, but it doesn't cover the repercussions in PR and in brand image. Those things can never be recovered sometimes without a good PR team. So if there's a lot of healthcare systems out there who are looking to invest into that because they understand the value of it. And then finally, image precedes growth. We cannot expect financial growth without a good image, and that is what PR does, whether it be healthcare or any other industry. A brief industry overview of PR is, first of all, 2022, they're expected to hit $100 billion of total revenue, expected CAGR of 11% year over year, with 8,500 different PR establishments in the United States. And this is a key here. It fluctuates up and down with the US economy, specifically whatever sector of the US economy they're tied to. So if they're in fintech like Bevel is, we can expect it to be closely tied to the fluctuations of the economy. On the phone call with Bevel a few weeks ago, they talked about how during COVID, they had to beg their clients to stay on board with them. So when the economy goes down, one of the first things like advertising, like marketing, is PR to go, because it's not always deemed necessary, even though it is very necessary. Lastly, profits are derived from creativity, reputation, and personal efficiency. I will provide towards the end of the presentation my valuations, my projections, and much of it is centered upon the fact that Bevel is very creative. They have a great reputation and they have awesome personnel efficiency. And those things are difficult to attain, but Bevel does it with great ease. Things you should know about PR. This will probably be the most important slide of this entire presentation. The reason being is because it addresses many of the misconceptions and misunderstandings that arise when you talk about PR. The first being business to customer, B2C for short. B2C refers to the relationship that a PR firm has with a customer. It is in contrast to B2B, which means business to business. Let's say that you're a SPAC looking to go to market. You would hire a PR firm for business to business reasons because you're looking to have a better reputation among businesses to get a better valuation. Business to customer, which is the majority of Bevel's PR activities, those things are customer facing, meaning they address the customer and the reputation the customer has for that firm. But here's the point. Business to customer PR is definitionally industry agnostic, meaning it does not matter what industry it is. Relationships with the customer requires very little industry specificity. The reason being because the customer aren't industry experts, and knowing how to communicate to people is true across all industries. So when you do your research into any PR, I would encourage you to do your research and look at their client list. So I looked up Kaiser Permanente's, which is a big branch of healthcare branches here in San Diego. Who does their PR? Well, it's the same company that does PR for Mattel, for a yoga studio, things that you wouldn't think are synergistic to healthcare. They have to diversify because it's the same exact skills. And industry specialization does not typically occur in PR unless their network is within that group. So someone like Bevel, the reason why they're in fintech is because of their network. It does not reflect the capabilities in fintech because, again, it's industry agnostic, it's universal. But what they're looking for from us is industry diversification, using our network to grow into healthcare and to protect themselves from the downsides of the fintech volatility, you might say. So concentration is actually a great opportunity for us to enter in. And when it comes to PR, as we talked about, synergy has a unique application. So we cannot view it through the typical lens of whether healthcare and fintech, for example, go together. We need to be looking at it from the perspective of whether or not the things that Bevel would be doing for healthcare would be similar to the things they would be doing for fintech. I would argue that is the case because if you're making an investment in, let's say, Acorns, you want to be sure that they have your best interests in mind, that they'll protect your funds. Same thing goes for healthcare. You want to be sure that they're protecting your life and your health. So when it comes to PR, there is a synergy between them. There's a number of other things that I can talk about later, but those are the main things you should know about PR. And do they have those criteria fitting together? Yes, of course they do. Next, let's move to an overview of Bevel PR. We'll talk about the infrastructure that Bevel has built up over the past few years. Then talking about the services that they provide. I got some data on that. And then thirdly, the finances. So here's the leadership of Bevel PR. The CEO is Jessica Schaefer. She comes from Point72 Ventures, Steve Cohen's venture capital fund. And she was responsible for all the external communications, meaning PR, for Steve Cohen personally. She was so good at it, in fact, that she decided to start her own PR firm, known now as Bevel, and they still maintain Point72 Ventures as a client, a reflection of how good she is at what she does. Her longtime friend and close confidant, Morgan Boer, is her partner at Bevel, and they do seem to have a great friendship with one another and appear to make decisions in tandem. The most recent addition to their leadership team is Ronnie Gross, who is a chief operations officer. And he was previously at one of their clients' firms. And through, I think, a mutual connection, he joined Bevel and has been quite successful in leading the operations front. They have 3 offices, one in New York, In my previous presentation, I talked about how it's only a 15-minute drive away from KVLR headquarters, which is a big deal. And they recognized it because they actually changed the name of the title of the selling page for Bevel to say a New York-based firm, which they understand the reasons why it's extremely important to be nearby. The second branch is in Santa Monica, a place I know very well. In fact, I know exactly where this is. I think I may have walked right by this in the past. And they built this out for their West Coast clients. Most recently, being built this year is a Miami, Florida location for their crypto headquarters, because that's what the crypto hub of the United States in Miami. And they look to serve their crypto customers there. They have 34 employees, 11 vacancies. We'll discuss this in a minute. And then 65 clients as of 2022. The services they provide are in 3 major industries. Number 1 is in fintech. 42% of their concentration is in fintech, and that is way too big. We're looking to expand that, but they understand that they need to diversify as well. But 42% is in fintech, again, a reflection of Jessica's network. Secondly, they are in venture capital, private equity, and SPACs, about 15% concentration. Then thirdly, they're in crypto and blockchain, about the same concentration. Then miscellaneous items take about 28%, one of which is healthcare, which we're looking to expand. On a daily basis, they spend most of their time somewhat equally around multiple activities, including crisis communications, media relations, public affairs, investor relations, social media, advisory and consulting. Finally, influencer relations. You should just view this slide as this is a comprehensive package that they use to provide their clients with the best image possible. Who do they provide these services to? The most important and the biggest revenue source is from Acorns, second being public, and then a couple others. But what we're looking to do is maintain these large clients, but expand the smaller bubbles in the periphery, and also add in kind of a buffer zone around that with other smaller clients, which would be the goal of expanding into healthcare, because Acorns and public are all fintech related, and it's unlikely that we would want to remain those as the primary concentration. A case for mutual benefit. This will likely be the most important section of this presentation, mainly because it goes into depth of how KVLR and Bevel can work together in the dynamic that we will see. Why does Bevel need KVLR? The answers are quite obvious. First of all, they need to diversify into healthcare. Fintech, SPACs, and crypto are very risky asset classes. And if they stay in this too long, they could end up suffering severe consequences. So the quicker they get out of that, the better. And in a network-driven business, we've discussed this before, but KVLR can introduce them to new healthcare clients and diversify them. The second thing is they're looking from KVLR to gain capital and hiring capabilities as a result of that capital. They're looking to seek a partner to help acquire boutique PR firms in the tri-state area as well as across the United States using our capital. And they currently outsource those things at the moment. They currently outsource marketing, for instance, or social media, but they'd like to bring those in-house because they do such a great job with everything else. They think they can do the same for those. Then the capital would also go to fill vacancies, which I hope to do nearly immediately to try to fill up those 11 vacancies, because it's space being wasted. And it's a great opportunity for us to initiate our diversification into healthcare. The key here is, how does KVLR benefit from PR? There's 2 ways of viewing this, either the short-term investment or the long-term investment. This presentation will endorse the long-term investment view. However, if need be, at the end of maybe 5 to 7 years, you might opt for a short-term investment. But I strongly believe that the long-term investment will be ultimately the most beneficial to KVLR. But let's talk a little bit about what you might get if we're KVLR from the short-term side. After exit, KVLR will have made a tremendous profit, but without lasting value to KVLR's portfolio. We will, however, have added tremendous value to Bevel's portfolio. We'll have opened them up to new diversification. We will have given them new hiring capabilities and stabilize their growth. All those things will last beyond our exit. But for us, all we would be left with is a good return on investment, which is not bad, but I think we can do a little better than that. Again, short-term ROI, but long-term benefit is contained into Bevel. Long-term investments, however, we'd be looking to integrate Bevel healthcare branch into KVLR advisory, and would provide benefits for all subsidiaries of KVLR. How is that so? Well, it can be used as an arm for KVLR to tap into large firms, groups not for sale, and nonprofits. Many of you are familiar with advisory, and at the moment we serve primarily smaller groups who do not meet our capital criteria. If we can implement PR into KVLR advisory, we'll be able to expand our services to larger groups and nonprofits. Nonprofits being a big one because they have to unload all of their profits by year end. And one of the main things they do that in is through PR, advertising, marketing. I was watching a baseball game the other night, and UCSD is the official healthcare sponsor of the Padres. UCLA Health is the official sponsor of the Dodgers. The reason being is because they have to unload if they're a nonprofit organization. We typically would not be able to tap into that, but now with a PR branch, we would be able to do that. The takeaway here is long-lasting value to KVLR in the long term with potential to expand our sphere of influence. So this presentation will go down this route. I then approached this question a couple days ago. Well, why are we specifically targeting Bevel? Why don't we get another PR firm, or why do we not just create our own? There's a few reasons for that. The first being talent. As David would probably agree, when we went onto that phone call, you could immediately tell that Bevel is filled with capable young people. I actually put in the link here for their website, but I would encourage you all to go to bevelpr.com. Just take a look at their website. It is absolutely astonishing how good it looks. And you look at their clients' websites and their public image there, and it's stunning how good everything looks. And that's mainly because they have capable young people, things that honestly healthcare does not have at the moment. They have kind of taken a back seat to this technological revolution. And I was in my research looking at some of the biggest healthcare systems. The fourth biggest healthcare system doesn't even have an app. And when I looked that up, it was quite shocking, actually. But Bevel is filled with these young people who know how to take these healthcare firms to the next level, which no one else is really doing. The second reason why we could target Bevel is because we could get a great discount for this. Their concentration and client profile is a great vulnerability for them. And if we have a little bit of patience, we could allow us to exploit it for a discount. The reason being because I expect towards the end of the year, we'll see a downturn in fintech, as we've already seen in the first half of this year. And if EBITDA follows my projections, we could get this for a much less discount. Thirdly is a fintech healthcare synergy. Their businesses are very different, but the public-facing aspect is absolutely identical. And that goes back to it being industry agnostic. Fourthly is the existing infrastructure. This addresses the question of why do we not just build our own PR firm? We do not, because it would be capital intensive, and we don't have the talent, we don't have the network, we don't have the capabilities to build our own. And if we did, it would cost twice as much for half as good of a PR firm as just buying Bevel, for example. So that's why we don't do that. Well, what is a model that I'm actually looking to specifically integrate into Bevel and KVLR? We'll begin with phase one. I titled the Bevel expansion, which is from the acquisition to 2028, which is a 5 to 7 year time horizon. Phase two is the long-term transitions towards a sustainable future for KVLR PR, which would take place in 2028 and beyond. And then I'll close with some of my projections and targets. The vision I have for both Bevel and KVLR is to, number one, stabilize Bevel through diversification and acquisitions. It's clearly the case that they need this, and I think that I can bring that to the table. Second thing is we are looking to expand KVLR advisory to new client bases, including nonprofits and large organizations and groups not for sale, through Bevel PR. Then thirdly is I just want to see both Bevel and KVLR grow to new heights together. The phase 1 goals for Bevel include international expansion. On the phone call, they mentioned how they want to expand to Tel Aviv as a potential area, but they also are open to ideas domestically as well. The second thing is we're looking to fill vacancies there and then expand around 55 further jobs that we'd be looking to hire. Thirdly, we want to diversify into healthcare. They made clear that they do not want it to be a majority, but they never really specifically answered the question of whether or not it could be a plurality. So we could get a significant share of their industry diversification into healthcare. And it remains unclear how much they're willing to do, but it could be a plurality. Then fourthly, Bevel wants to acquire boutique firms that specialize in marketing, which they outsource currently. If I did join Bevel, this would be what I would be doing on a day-to-day basis, what I'm doing today, but just with boutique PR firms. KVLR, on the other hand, has different goals. Number one is we're looking to maximize diversification into healthcare. My target is 35%. In my analysis, I feel that's a good number without overtaking fintech and other industries. Secondly, we want to create a Bevel subsidiary by year 2 to focus on healthcare development, titled for this presentation, Bevel Health. And then we want to offer a Castle Connolly model for Bevel Health. Castle Connolly is a tri-state area group that's centered in New York City, and they vet, promote, and advertise physicians across the United States, really. And that's how they make their money, because they go through a rigorous process of making sure that they have the best standards of healthcare and of safety. So what we could do with Bevel Health is somewhat similar. We could implement this model to vet healthcare groups and use it as a promotional site. The way we'd get compensated, like Castle Connolly, is through equity in these physician groups. A quick timeline here for what this would look like. 2023 would mainly be getting to know Bevel PR and filling all the vacancies. I would like to emphasize getting to know Bevel PR because they pride themselves on the internal cohesiveness of their employees. And in order to have a effective strategy of communications, you need to have a talented group of people who are all on the same page. So before I go out and start my acquisition process, I would look to see what is Bevel all about, what are their employees like, and that would inform me in my future acquisition targets. In 2024, I begin those acquisition targets with 2 strategic acquisitions in the year 2024. They can be either domestic or international, depending on what the current state of the market is and what Bevel is wanting to do specifically in that area. The other thing is I want to initiate a subsidiary creation called Bevel Health, and that will allow us to focus on healthcare, leaving the CEO and partner to focus on the things that they've always traditionally done. 2025, I'd be looking to expand Bevel Health through 50% of the new hires going to it. In 2026, we would like to develop a Midwest Bevel Health branch, and that would be with the long-term view that this could end up being in the portfolio of KVLR, with the ultimate goal of being coast to coast. Finally, in 2027, Bevel Health would become KVLR PR. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Phase 1 would look something like this. KVLR would own Bevel, and Bevel, around year 2, would create Bevel Health. At around the 5 to 7 year mark, we would be looking to separate it off and move Bevel into its own category and transform Bevel Health into KVLR PR. The reason why we want to do this is because if we ever want to exit our position with Bevel, we can always do so and maintain the PR front. And that can be done through a number of ways, through subsidiary transfer processes, but we can talk about that later. If you have any questions about that, I can give you an explanation. But What this would do is give us more flexibility in what we do with Bevel. It would remove the liability of having underneath the Bevel umbrella and move it into our own. So you might be asking yourself, where should KVLR PR go? The best place is KVLR Advisory, and here's the reasons why. Number one, it would make their services more comprehensive. Number two, the client base would be more diverse, including larger groups and nonprofit. Imagine a group comes in, whether it be a nonprofit, larger group, or even a smaller group, and they want to expand their physician size. They want to create an MSO, and they'd like to have some PR services. We'd be able to do all those things and more. But the reason why we're able to do it so easily is because they both use retainers, which should make integration extremely simple and make it customizable to the client's needs. We're moving now to the part where we talk about their finances. And this is an area I think of great vulnerability. But if you have a certain perspective on it, it's a place of great opportunity. The top quartile, or the top 25% of their clients, make up 60% of their revenue. And that's remained unchanged since 2019. That's a dangerous fact, especially considering it's not in something like healthcare, it's in fintech. So we'd be looking to expand the upper quartile, lower quartile, and bottom quartile to make it more diversified. Secondly, growth is independent of churn rate. Churn rate refers to the number or percentage of clients that depart from Bevel in a monthly basis. So the secondary axis on the right is connected to the bar chart. In February, just over 5% of their total clients left. That might seem scary, but it's not. And let me explain why. The reason not to be scared of churn rate is because this is mostly, if you take it actually with this previous graph, you'll realize that it mostly takes place in the bottom quartile. And that's true because you see that the churn rate increases, but revenue remains constant, in fact, increases. So I did a little bit of an analysis on this, and it shows that there's zero correlation between churn rate and monthly revenue, which is good because it's not subject to the fluctuations. However, it means it's closely tied to their biggest clients. And that's a little bit of an intimidating thing, but that would hopefully settle itself out in the future. My projections for revenue, let me just move this taskbar out of the way so I can read this title. So this is revenue by customer, sorted from least to greatest. I was pondering how I should present this data, and let me explain this in the best way I know how. On the x-axis, you'll see the number of clients. Client number one is their biggest paying client. So in 2019, the blue line, their number one client, which was Acorns, had about $225,000 revenue. And then their number two client, their number three client, and all the way to 6, and all the way down the line pays that much. The important thing here is with every passing year, they're having more and more clients in the middle range. They're not only gaining more clients, but their middle clients are paying more. So by 2022, you'll see that their 26th client is paying what their first client was in 2019. And here's the reason why why this is a good way of looking at it. It's because over time, you'll realize there's a very stable trend that with every passing year, they're gaining more clients and diversifying out with a healthier middle base. What we'd be looking to do as a diversification in healthcare, my analyses claim, is that by 2028, we would be having large clients, of course, within the top percent, around $350,000. But if you go down the line, the 56th client will still be paying around $150,000 revenue. What this shows is that intra volatility, if we have, let's say, one client drop out, the number one client we have at $350,000 in 2028, we still have all the other clients down the list that support us. But if we had that in 2019, that would be a huge hit to revenue because that's the biggest source of the revenue. So again, going down those projections year over year would be indicative of diversification and, let me just see here, growth and diversification and stability really as well. And these are my projections for revenue, EBITDA, and growth. The growth has been quite stable over time, but my projections estimate that 2021 will be their best year of growth. And I think this is going to empirically being borne out right now with fintech taking such a large hit. I do not expect that they will meet their targets for 2022, which will make an acquisition all the more easy. But their revenue percent growth, marked in green, will be decreasing to an industry average of around 15%. Their EBITDA margin, they project this quarter to be, or this year to be about 25%. Actually, that's my projections. They projected to be 33%. That's unheard of. If it ends up being 33%, I'll eat my hat, but that's not going to likely be the case. An industry average is around 25%. So using these numbers, I projected both revenue and EBITDA such that by 2028, I project that we will have around $20 million of revenue with about $5 million of EBITDA. Other projections and targets. I would like to project that 20% labor growth year over year to 100 employees by 2028. These are all conservative, including the previous slide. All of these projections are conservative. I always like to take the most conservative approach because at the very least, you'll still be making money, but you don't want to over project because then that messes up your acquisition and everything. So my projections for labor growth is 20% year over year. And by 2028, we'll have over 100 employees. The valuation, as I just mentioned, was going to be about $30 million. But the key thing here is that's excluding the KVLR PR subsidiary. So if we view it from an exit point of view, we would be able to exit with $30 million and also maintain KVLR PR. So that's a huge benefit for us. The projected clientele at 2028 is 230 total clients. Right now they're at 65, but we expect by 2028 they'll have 230. The target Bevel PR will have around $6.3 million of revenue right now. That's my projections for this year, $6.3 million of revenue, 25% margins, and a 5 to 6 multiple. They are asking for around 7.1 times multiple. That is unheard of in the industry, and it is extremely unlikely that we'd ever give anything like this. The historical multiple that PR firms get is around 5. The premium is around 5.5, and I think that would be a fair valuation, 5.5, which would put us at $8 million to $9.5 million valuation. If this is the case, that would be a significant reduction from their $15 million asking price. I like to close this presentation with a brief conversation for why I feel I am qualified to take on this role at Bevel and with KVLR. Number one is the job will require interpersonal skills. I come from a family history of people who have been CEOs, one of my cousin is the HR director at Sunbum, a sunscreen company. And my dad obviously worked in healthcare with somewhat kind of a PR role with healthcare. This job will require interpersonal skills, and my family history and my own interests align with that. Number two is you need to be able to look beyond the numbers. You need to be able to see that Bevel is not just a money-making machine, which they are, but beyond that, they are people, and people are heavily involved in PR. And if you don't have good people, you can't expect to have good money. So I want to also bring to the table an ability to look beyond the numbers. Thirdly, is finding innovative and expansive solutions. I've always, from a young age, looked to think outside the box, and I'd be looking to do the same with Bevel PR, whether it be through the acquisitions or through hiring, finding new industries. All those things are solutions that I'd be looking to have at Bevel. And then fourthly is I'm just really excited and committed. When I first was asked by David to take on this presentation, I didn't really know what to expect, but when I started discovering more about PR and their relationship with KVLR potentially, I became really excited, and I'm extremely committed to this project in a way that I never really anticipated. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.
If we were in a theater, we'd probably have a round of applause go around. Noah, very well done. Really excellent job. Preparation was key. The presentation itself should have probably taken you the entire length of the internship. So I'm not sure how you got it done in a week. Very well done, really. In case anyone did not notice, this was the Quantum Leap presentation that Noah was conducting. So well done, and I think although this is non-healthcare, you were able to make a convincing argument. And with your consent, I'll share this video with the board, just so they could understand the perspective that we have. As the board, any of you who heard the board call, the board was not too fond of us acquiring a PR firm. Anyone listen to that call?
I did. Uh-oh, looks like he left.
Oh, no, I do have a question.
Yes.
What's the churn rate?
What was that? Do you mind repeating that?
What's the churn rate from your presentation?
Sorry, the churn rate is the monthly, the percentage of clients who leave on a monthly basis. And my case there in that slide was that it's not correlated to their growth. The reason being because the people who leave are typically smaller groups who have less contract ability, you might say. They can't stay for long periods of times like the larger group, which is a great thing if you look at like, well, okay, the churn rate isn't as scary as it looks. But on the other hand, it suggests that they're highly concentrated in larger groups, which we'd like to change. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you.
I have one, and following up on that question, did you by any chance try to see what the industry churn rate is specifically for PR firms so you can compare theirs relative to others?
That's a great question. Although I do not have the numbers on that, because I think PR is especially protective of their client data, so it's very difficult to even find any data on the industry. I'll try to get that for you. No promises, but what I would expect, just intuition based, is that their churn rate is probably lower than most PR firms because they are, again, concentrated so heavily into their top quartile of customers.
Just to add to that, anything less than 5% is considered exceptional for both marketing and PR agencies, as well as advisory. Advisory that's ongoing. Anything under 5% is exceptional.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably about the right number. I think, yeah, about 5% is probably right.
Team, any other questions for Noah? Okay, so next steps for the deal, or I should say for Bevel, is we begin drafting the proposal. What do you say, Noah?
I agree. I can get on that immediately. I'd like to. Do you have any feedback about the model, whether or not that is a good idea? That would be my specific goal for Bevel. But if we're drafting a proposal, do you think that would be a wise thing to consider?
Regarding KVLR Advisory becoming a PR firm for health groups? Is that
Yes.
the model you're referring to, or different model?
That model.
Yes, I would say we exclude that from the. I would say we exclude that from the proposal because it's going to be really dependent upon our experience working with Jennifer and Morgan, whether or not we decide to offer them equity in the KVLR Advisory arm. So as it pertains to their vehicle, which is Bevel, we want to include in that proposal everything that is addressing the valuation for Bevel. And as your presentation mentioned, we're excluding valuation whenever we go to market Bevel alone. And I also did appreciate the logo where it's a KVLR and right under LR, it had PR. I'm sure that was intended.
Took some time.
So well done. Yes,
Thank you.
that was a great presentation, and much of it was informative to the point where, you know, they would probably have to redo their entire deck afterwards. It's less convinced, put it that way, and probably something that they're still continuing to work on. I'm not too sure how long We Are Barney have been in business. Do we know that number? How many years?
I'm not quite sure. I don't know too much about We Are Barney.
Okay, that makes things easier. So that means there was really nothing available for us to find out. Is my connection good,
It's a little spotty.
everyone, or was there a disconnect with the voice? Got it. Okay, I was hoping that, but there's nothing I can do. So we'll circle back probably on Monday to begin working on that proposal. And if I'm not mistaken, there was RAI, Research America Incorporated, as a template for one of the proposals. See that copy?
Yes, I reviewed that a few days
Yes.
ago.
Yes. So it's going to be a very similar structure because that was a non-healthcare research firm. Although they had a very small number of healthcare clients, it was primarily non-healthcare. So does that sound like a good model to work?
Yes, I definitely agree. And I'm glad though that you said that it was informative. I learned so much that I thought went against the grain of what I thought going into it. And I think even what the board was thinking in their minds, I think it's a little different than anyone really expected when you really dig into it. And so I hope that it was really informative to you all. And thank you so much for listening.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.